What is up, guys? Welcome back to the garage. Scream 6, the new film in my beloved horror franchise, released nationwide today. I dropped my review on this channel a couple days ago because I was lucky enough to see it early. I'll throw a tag up here for you if you want to check out my review of it, but spoilers, I really enjoyed it. Now, what we're going to do today is we are going to rank all 6 of the Scream films. This is my personal ranking from my absolute favorite film, which will be at number 1, to my film that I also love, which is my number 6 on this list. I love all of these movies as if they were my own children. There is very little gap between my number 1 and what is ultimately going to be in my 6th place here. And when this video is out, the ranking will also be on Letterboxd. If you want to follow me over there, please look down below. You'll find all the links to that. And please comment down below too. Let me know what your ranking of the Scream franchise is, or what your all-time favorite Scream movie is. All right, coming in at my number 6 is going to be 2022 Scream. Some people call it Scream 5. I wish Paramount had called it Scream 5. For some reason, we got the title Scream, which of course harkened back to the original title of the original film, which will be coming up a little bit later on this list. The reason it ranks as my bottom here is because it's probably too new to have really crept up my list. That's not going to make a lot of sense because obviously I have not listed Scream 6 yet, which is literally a day old. But I did feel like that this movie had a little bit of an identity crisis. It didn't really know if it was trying to be like the original, if it was trying to do a requel, which essentially it is, if it was just another sequel. We had our new characters mixed in here: Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega, Jasmine Savoy Brown. I love all of them, and I love this new group of characters, which I'm going to talk about when we get to Scream 6 on this list a little bit. But then we also, of course, had Sidney Prescott, Gale, Dewey. We had our legacy characters here. They were all kind of jumbled together, and I wasn't quite sure what the end goal was here for Radio Silence. I didn't really know what I was supposed to take away from it as the number 1 kind of thing. I love this movie. I just feel like it's kind of like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but it never really committed to being its own thing. However, this movie will always hold a special place to me because it did introduce us to our new core 4 and our new group of fresh faces, which freaking killed it in the latest installment. And that all started here with Scream 5. It's at my number 6. Another reason why I put Scream 2022 at my number 6 is because I couldn't bring myself to put this one dead last on my list. I love this movie. This movie will be last on a lot of people's rankings. Go check out my friend Ryan C. Showers and his Scream podcast if you want to hear more love on Scream 3. That one falls at my number 5. I love this movie. I think that this is the one movie that could be defined as a little more comedy than it is horror. Scream has a nice mix in all of its movies of the comedy and the horror aspects, but in Scream 3 it was really kind of slapstick over the top. Even some iconic imagery from this film is just hilarious to see today in retrospect, whether it's Carrie Fisher's cameo in this movie, which is one of my favorite movie cameos of all time, by the way, or whether it's Gale Weathers' bangs worn by Courtney Cox in this film, Parker Posey's character in this movie. So many hilarious things come from Scream 3, but yet we still have kind of the nature of Ghostface and kind of the suspense and thriller aspects built in too. There was a lot of stuff going on in the country in terms of mass shooting and violence, and the studio asked Wes Craven to kind of scale Scream back a little bit. Of course, they still wanted to release it to make money, let's be honest, but they decided to go with a little bit more of a PG-13 version of Scream, even though this one might not be rated PG-13 as it's rated R. But you get what I'm saying. It was a little more cookie cutter, a little more Mickey Mouse than we got in the past. Like I said, there is a very narrow gap between my number 1 and my number 6 here. Scream 3 is no different. It falls at my number 5 when I'm ranking the franchise. This is where people might kind of raise their eyebrow, especially people that know me really well. But Scream 2 falls at my number 4, the original sequel. It takes place on a college campus, so you have the aspect of this college kind of comedy built into the slasher aesthetic. It's a freaking fantastic movie. A lot of great performances across the board. Randy, rest in peace. Last time we see Randy Meeks alive on cameras in Scream 2. One of my favorite scenes, if not my favorite scene, in the entire Scream franchise, probably at least top 3, is when Sydney is trapped in the police car with Ghostface kind of knocked out in the driver's seat, and her friend have to crawl over his lap to get out of the police cruiser through the window because they're trapped. Highest tension. I've talked about that scene before on my podcast. I love it so much. There's a lot of cheesiness in this film that the rewatchability is high on this movie for me, but I also feel like when I watch it, there's certain scenes that don't quite hold up. The comedy was in a different place and the world was in a different place. When you watch it today, it's a little cheesy. I'm talking about Jerry O'Connell singing in the cafeteria. And some of the jokes land a little flat today versus the way they were probably seen in 97. I do love the opening of this movie with Jada Pinkett Smith and Omar Epps at the movie theater. That's a very over-the-top kill sequence in the beginning of that movie. A lot of people are going to be surprised it's this low down my list, but Scream 2 from 1997 is my number 4. All right, guys, here we go. My number 3, I'm a fanboy of Scream 4 from 2011. Wes Craven in the director's chair for the last time in the franchise that he loves so much, which is one of the reasons why this holds such a special place to me and I hold it on such a pedestal. I also love the reveal of Ghostface in this movie. It is my second only to the original, even though I'm putting it at my number 3. I'm talking about merely the last act. This is my second favorite last act, if you will, in the entire Scream franchise. Again, I'm going to stay away from spoilers. This one's 12 years old, but who knows? Maybe people are revisiting these movies because the new one's out, so I'll just kind of tiptoe around it. But the introduction of Emma Roberts here, who is a young actress that I love, and her kind of like delicate approach to this character and her connection to Sydney, being one of Sydney's remaining family members that's able to kind of console her. There's also weird stuff going on in the shadows. We're introduced to Kirby Reed in this movie, Hayden Panettiere's character. A lot of great characters are introduced here. And again, the motivation in Scream 4 I like more than most of the motivation of the Ghostface killers in the series. It really worked for me. I felt like in the digital age, in the YouTube age, as I'm sitting here filming a video for YouTube, I just think it made sense and it really spoke to the times. I also love that this was the first movie that brought us back to the franchise after a gap of 11 years. It had been a long time since we had seen Ghostface. As fans, it had been a long time since we'd been able to go back to the movies to see a Scream film. And for a lot of people, this was the first time that they got to see a Scream movie in the theater because a new generation of fans was being brought in. And I honestly believe that it had a lot to do with characters like Hayden Panettiere and Emma Roberts, and even Rory Culkin and his role in this movie. And like I said, being that it's Wes Craven's kind of sign-off of the series, it is special for that reason. I love Scream 4. It gets a little bit of hate among fans, but I love it. As you can see, it's my number 3. All right, guys, I wasn't sure if I was going to rank this as highly as I did, but I'm making the video, so it's real now. My number 2, my runner-up, is the film that just came out, Scream 6. The film is in New York. I just did a full-length review of this film. I mentioned it at the top of this video as well. You guys can go check it out on my channel. In fact, hell, it's probably the video right before this one. But I love how it continued the relationship of the Carpenter sisters. That's the number 1 draw and kind of the center of this movie. Yes, but the center of this franchise going forward. As I mentioned before, Sidney Prescott is absent here. Neve Campbell. Tear, I hate it. I love her. She's one of the greatest final girls of all time. I hope she makes an appearance in future installments if it makes sense. But what I will tell you is, with or without her, the turn and the narrative and the way the story advanced for the Carpenter sisters, Tara and Sam, in this movie, I am now connected to them as a pair just as much as I am to Sydney from the other films in the franchise. They have kind of taken on that role of being these heroines in distress that are trying to escape the Ghostface trauma. And we feel for them, we care for them, and we root for them. And because of that, this movie has done a phenomenal thing, in my opinion, because it's gone from essentially the Laurie Strode of the franchise, Sidney Prescott, and given us new characters that we care for just as much. I'm only speaking for myself, but I love the actresses playing in these roles, and I love what they did in this movie. If you want to check out everything else I think about it, check out my review on this page, but it's my runner-up in the franchise. All right, so no surprise here, but my number 1 is the original from 1996, Scream, directed by Wes Craven. I could talk about this until my camera battery dies. I won't. What I will say is that this film reinvigorated not only horror movies, but cinema. This movie gave us something to go to the movies for from an event perspective. And I'm not even talking about Blockbuster. The Blockbuster was still around. We had Jurassic Park in the 90s. We had a lot of stuff going on. Titanic in 97, a year after this. But this movie was like an event where you were talking about it around the water coolers. Kids were talking about it at high schools and colleges. They were going out in groups, having their parents drop them off to go see Scream. I know because I was one of them. And I've mentioned this on the channel before. This movie, Scream, turned me into a bona fide horror guy. I was casually enjoying scary movies, if you will, prior to 96. But after seeing Scream, I was a dedicated horror fanatic. And I really credit Wes Craven and the franchise and the portrayal of some of these iconic characters. Matthew Lillard is, to this day, my favorite character in any Scream movie, as Stu Macher. Absolutely nails it from a comedic perspective. He's also terrifying, but you kind of want him to kill you and you want to kind of like hang out with him as he's doing it, because you know he's going to give you a stand-up comedy act while you're going down in flames at his hand. But this movie is not only my favorite Scream movie, as I'm putting it at my number one, it is one of the greatest movies. I'm not talking horror, one of the greatest movies of all time. It really changed the kind of like teen comedy, and we know it changed horror. It changed the slasher subgenre as well. Just an amazing film. Wes Craven reinvigorated an entire industry, much like he did in the decade before with Nightmare on Elm Street. I love it. Scream from 96 is my number one. No one is surprised. All right, guys, that's it. That's my ranking of the Scream films. Go see Scream 6 this weekend. As you saw, it was my runner-up in the entire franchise. Oh, God, I don't even want to read the comments on this video. I'm going to be covering literally nothing but Scream and the Oscars for like the next week. So hopefully you enjoy those things. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time in the garage.